You know, I've been thinking a lot lately about psychic divination and all the things that land under that esoteric umbrella. Whether it's tarot reading or palmistry or crystal scrying or tea leaf reading, there's something that separates all those different methods from performance art, and that's a powerful medium. Now, when it comes to psychic ability, a person's ability to reach out into the ether and receive divine guidance really varies from person to person. And we've discussed powerful mediums on this channel before, like Maria Orsic. But there's arguably a more powerful and more prominent psychic medium known throughout history that really shaped and informed an empire like no woman could dare dream to at the time. She was second only in power to the emperor or the king at the time, and that's something not a lot of women in history can claim. So today we're going to be looking at another powerful psychic medium, and one that is arguably the most influential to have ever lived. It's not just one woman, though. It's a variety of women, known as Pythia. Join me as today East10 investigates the Oracle of Delphi. All right, my friends, before we immerse ourselves too deep in Delphinian mysticism, I need to take a minute to do that shameless content creator thing and let you know that YouTube does not have amazing psychic abilities like the Pythias of Delphi. So if you want me to be in the algorithm and you think other people might enjoy this kind of content, take a second to leave a like, a comment, share me out. All that YouTube stuff, it really does help. So please help me get back in YouTube's good graces. I make content on symbology and weather topics and things of the sort that they don't necessarily appreciate, but you can let them know that you appreciate it. Play the YouTube game, help me out. All right, that's the end of my shameless plug. Now, let's take a look at the navel of the world, the seat of Delphi, and why the ancient world really did view this as the center of the world. The year is 800 BC, and you've received great news that the Oracle is communing with Apollo right now. You make your way from your homeland to the navel of the world, Delphi, along with hundreds of other pilgrims. For days you travel through treacherous lands with bandits and robbers preying on you every step of the way. But it'll all be worth it as soon as you can have your burning questions answered by the all-knowing Pythia. You arrive at the temple and wait outside the steps with hundreds of other pilgrims just like you with arms full of offerings. The air has a putrid smell of death hanging on it as countless animals are sacrificed and piled up outside the temple in the midday sun. People are pushy and rude as they try and ensure they will get their chance to talk to the Oracle that day. But nothing is going to shake your mood and determination. You've waited many communication cycles, but each time water was poured on the sacred goat, it shivered as a sign that Apollo was not in a talkative mood. Not this time, though. The goat said Apollo is ready to commune, and you are determined as ever to get that conversation. As you approach, the priest takes your offerings and sacrifices and ushers you into a back chamber. And that's when you see her. Young, beautiful, a simple and fair maiden seated on a stool with eyes cast 1,000,000 miles away. Sweet vapors fill the air and swirl around you as you draw near. The moment has come at last for you to ask your question and receive divine guidance. 2 questions you ask her, 2 possibilities, and you wait patiently while her gaze takes focus. Vague riddles come out of her mouth, but they are exactly what you've been waiting to hear. Elated that the stars are shining in your favor, you return home to your village and tell everybody of the Oracle's true and amazing powers. And for hundreds of years, that's exactly how the legend spread. People would go and commune with the Oracle and then go back to their village and discuss these things as a community. And if the Oracle was right, well, it was just proof of her power. And if the Oracle was wrong, it was proof that she's wiser than you and you just didn't know how to interpret her advice. So either way, it was a win-win as far as the reputation build goes. But there's something arguably more fascinating happening when you cut through the smoke and theatrics of it all. So let's take a closer look at the Pythia. In the very earliest of times at Delphi, what was desired from a Pythia candidate was very different from when the last oracle took the seat. Prior to the 5th century BC, the oracle was to be a young virgin maiden. Due to a number of scandals like pregnant Pythias and attempted sexual assaults and kidnappings, eventually the rules were changed to set a more mature woman on the seat. After the 5th century BC, all candidates for Pythia were required to be over the age of 30, but still be unmarried and a virgin. Now, the virgin maiden trope is one that quite curiously appears over and over throughout historical narratives, but it's important to note that the Delphinian definition of virgin simply meant had not given birth. So that's really all they were interested in. But there was a number of humiliating tests they would put the Pythia candidate through to verify that she had in fact never gotten pregnant. Now, despite how I made the Pythia sound in the story to romanticize it, the life of a Pythia was anything but glamorous, and it started first with a humiliating test done by the priesthood. They would have the woman come in and squat naked in front of them, where they would closely examine her for things like scarring or stretch marks or anything that they perceived to be signs of pregnancy. A lot of women did not pass that portion of the test, but for the ones who did, well, they moved on to their training to begin their life as a Pythia. And believe me, it only got less and less glamorous from here. If getting poked and prodded and dragged around like cattle by the priesthood didn't sound like an awesome enough time, well, the perks only got better from there. The Pythia wasn't allowed any form of hygiene upkeep. See, the priesthood said that in order for the Pythia to be as pure as possible, she had to be as natural and connected to nature as possible. But what that actually meant was no hair trimming anywhere of any kind. And not even hairbrushing was allowed. See, when the Pythia would give her readings, the only sort of styling she had is she would take her messy, unkempt hair and throw it back into a simple ponytail with a rope just lashed around once. So what was really in it for the Pythia? It's hard to say, but for hundreds of years, the chain remained unbroken. To add to all the glamorous perks of the job, the Pythia candidate would begin getting used to the vapors. It was a slow process because not everybody could withstand them. It turns out some candidates would turn manic upon smelling the vapors, others still would pass out and fall into the chasm, and still even more just fell unconscious right there on the ground and cracked their head open. Unfortunately, this wasn't actually all that uncommon. So the amount of Pythia candidates you ended up with was usually a pretty small number, just a couple. And then those candidates that had made it through all of this would play a waiting game. See, this wasn't really a job somebody retired from. Usually they died. And the average life expectancy of the Pythia was only about 50 years old. It turns out a lifetime of breathing hazardous fumes emitted from fissures in the earth isn't actually great for a long life expectancy. Who knew? Back in his day, Plutarch was a priest at the Temple of Apollo, and he wrote about the fumes and happenings at the temple, and is most likely our best and most reliable observer of events happening back then and how the temple operated on a day-to-day basis. But the fumes he described as being a sweet fragrance, almost like a scented perfume, and said that some days the smell was so strong it could even be smelled out in the waiting chambers, which, when you consider all the body odor and smell of decay that was out there, that must have been a pretty darn strong smell. But all of that was called into question in the 1800s when a group of scientists and academics took a look at Delphi and determined that not only was there no fault lines, there was no sign of any chemicals to be found. So for a very long time, basically the last 200 years, all of that was chalked up to smoke and mirrors and being fanciful in writing, and nothing more. That is, until it was tested again. In the 1980s, a team of academics went in following fault lines and determined that there was actually fault lines that intersected exactly where Plutarch said they did, right under the seat of the Oracle at Delphi. Furthermore, testing went on to prove that the water did in fact contain chemicals. Let's take a look at those next. Since the time of a seated oracle, it has long been speculated that the core of the Pythia's power came from powerful hallucinogens. See, the old world was no stranger to psychedelics, and in nearby and well-frequented places like Egypt, for instance, the priest class was regularly using Blue Lotus to commune with divinity. But we finally have answers for what exactly the vapors were coming from the fissures at Delphi. In 2001, the site was resurveyed with modern technology, and to the surprise of nobody, new results were found. Researchers J.Z. DeBoer, J.R. Hell, and J. Chanton identified active faults beneath the Temple of Apollo and detected hydrocarbon gases like ethylene, methane, and ethane in nearby spring water. Ethylene, a known anesthetic that induces euphoria, was almost certainly one of the vital parts of the Pythia's psychedelic concoction. A powerful psychedelic concoction doesn't necessarily equal a powerful psychic connection, though. The two can interplay, but one doesn't trump the other. So what exactly was going on with the Oracle, and was there any truth to her sensitivities? Or was she just sitting around getting high off fumes? Well, let's take a look at some of her readings with the benefit of hindsight to determine exactly how attuned she really might have been.
Oh, I know the number of the sand and the measure of the sea. I understand the speech of the dumb and hear the voiceless. The smell has come to my sense of a hard-shelled tortoise being cooked with a lamb's flesh in a bronze pot. Bronze is the cauldron underneath, and bronze is the lid.
If Croesus made war on the Persians, he would destroy a mighty empire. They further advised him to seek out the most powerful Greek peoples and make alliance with them. The sect of Christianity would lead to the destruction of the empire. Hear your fate, O dwellers in Sparta. Either your famed great town must be sacked, or the whole land of Lacedaemonian shall mourn the death of a king of the house of Heracles. A wall of wood alone shall be uncaptured, a boon to you and your children. You are invincible, my son.
But is there any credibility to these? Well, as it happens, yes. Most of these ended up being completely accurate, but this is a very small sample size, and unfortunately, it's the largest sample size we're going to get, because all of these accounts come secondhand from credible sources that supposedly gave a direct quote of what they were told by the Pythia. But as far as Apollo logs or anything like that, they don't exist. And see, that's actually a common denominator amongst mystery traditions. They don't have a tendency to write stuff down fairly often. At least they didn't in the distant past. They preferred instead to pass on their knowledge from master to student, a chain completely unbroken. But the problem with that is empires fall, and when they do, those chains fall. They get stamped into the dirt by the foot of the new empire, and that sacred knowledge is oftentimes lost, scattered like dust in the wind. But you have to ask yourself, if there was nothing to the Pythia's prophecies, would she have maintained such a seat of prominence for so long? There's probably some smoke to that fire. So what exactly are we to make of the Pythia's psychic predictions? Was she actually communing with the divine? Or was she just tripping off ethylene vapors? Well, that's for you to decide, dear viewer. But as for me, I firmly believe in psychic abilities. Think about it. We've all had an instance of thinking about somebody intensely, and then they call you on the phone. Or something deep in your gut telling you, don't go that way. And then later you find out something bad would have happened if you did. Or maybe even something as simple as having a song stuck in your head, and then you turn on the radio and what's on if not that song? See, we all experience psychic connection differently, and in the modern day, where we've been taught to tune it out and focus on the material around us, when we get these signals, they feel strange and foreign, but they're not. They're a part of you. They're a part of this planet. They're a part of this cosmos, a web of interconnection. And that blanket of consciousness, well, it can be tapped into. And there are people who do it more easily than others, but we've all had an experience of some kind or another that you can look back and raise an eyebrow about and wonder if maybe you dusted off the cobwebs. There might be a little more hiding under there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would love to know what you think down in the comments below. Was there anything to the Pythia's power, or was it all just elaborate old world smoke and mirror, parlor tricks meant to confuse and befuddle and control the masses? Let me know what you think. I would also love to know what you think about psychic abilities. See, I speak with a number of sensitive people online, and between the men and the women, there seems to be something of a discernible difference. For the women, the psychic connection comes far more easily, and for the men, it must be trained and honed. I would love to know if you have any experience like that. And like I say, fellas, just because it doesn't come as easy for us doesn't mean we can't dust off the cobwebs and get with it. So find a community, bounce things off of each other, hone your discernment, and who knows, maybe we can help raise the collective consciousness even a little bit more. Until next time, my friends, make sure you check out other videos in my playlist. I have a smorgasbord of things you might enjoy. And if none of these are things you might enjoy, well, you can catch me on Breaking Ancient News almost every Sunday, just at Breaking Ancient News. Check it out. And finally, I'll be live at the Quest for Ancient Civilizations conference in Scottsdale, Arizona, December 5th through the 7th. If you haven't already gotten tickets, make sure you check the link below. You're not going to want to miss this. But I promise that's all of my shilling. Until next time, my friends, be indomitable in your quest for knowledge, no matter what hurdles or obstacles get in your way. But until next time, and most importantly, stay curious, my friends.